God's loving Spirit within me.
So are you ready to use your gifts to make this world a better place to live in? Yes. All right, we need it. We're doing it. Okay, let's take a moment and center into that inner teacher. We know that it's the inner Christ that teaches us, and so we tune in to hear what you've got to say to us from within. Amen. Amen. All right. In July, we're going to be focusing on that, on divine creativity, and how it is that we create from within. That's how we make this world a better place, because what are we really making better in the beginning? Ourselves, right? And that's kind of a funny way to put it, I guess. We're fine the way we are, and we got a lot to learn, right? That's kind of the paradox. So let's affirm this. We're going to affirm it our 3 times. And in Unity, we use the power of words. We believe in the power of thought and the power of words. That's our creative power. And so we're going to align with it. And I know you know why. Not to make it true, but because it is true. It is true. And as we align with it, it helps us to participate in it. So I invite you to engage yourself, your energy system. And maybe this looks a little goofy, but you can do whatever you want. But I think of creativity as sort of like, that's creativity to me. So that's what I'm going to do in my divine self. And you can use whatever you want, however you want. But however you do it, if it's with your breath or with movement or just blinking your eyes, engage your energy system as we affirm this. So let's affirm it together. Creativity is my divine nature. Feel that. Creativity is my divine nature. Creativity is my divine nature. Boy, take that in. If you want to, turn to somebody near you and affirm that for them. It's the truth for them.
Creativity is your divine nature.
Okay. All right. Okay, I've got a riddle for you, and I'm going to need some help with this. You ready? What? All right. Okay, here we go. I'm sure this is going to be new. Ha, that's a sarcastic remark. Okay. There were 2 men who went fishing. Their names were Pete and Repeat. Well, Repeat caught a fish. That fish was so big that it pulled him out of the boat. So who was... Oops. Pay no attention to that. All right, we start over. All right. Pete and Repeat were sitting in the boat. Pete caught a fish, and it was so heavy that it pulled him in the water. So who was left in the boat?
Repeat.
Oh, there were 2 men in a boat. You know how it goes, right? All right. Does your life feel like that sometimes?
Yes.
Repeat, 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 repeat. Feels like I'm trying to do something different here. I'm trying to get somewhere. I'm trying to improve the quality of my life or experience it as more joyful or experience a world as more joyful. But sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in the repeat riddle, right? I feel like I just can't get out of it. And so the good news is that really we are always getting out of it, even when, even in that goofy joke, that even that, what happens when you tell it over and over? What happens to you? You learn something, right? You learn to tell the person that's telling it to shut up. Right? You learn something. So no matter whatever it is that we're going through, no matter how repetitive it feels, and it may be on many levels, it may be repetitive. It may be in many levels, in many ways that you are stuck in that pattern. And at the same time, because we are innately creative, because we are innately spiritual, also at the same time, what is happening is that we are learning. because spiritually we are always interested in the upward progressive movement in life. That's what it means to be spiritual. And it is always propelling us, no matter how it feels or how it looks to us or how it may look to somebody on the outside. The deep reality is we are always growing. We are always, the circumstances and even our own consciousness is always changing. It's always transforming. There's always light coming in, and it's really coming in from within, and that light is always showing us something new. The opportunity that we have as we keep growing spiritually and as we have an intent to grow spiritually and as that becomes a focus and an interest for us is to learn more and more about how can I consciously cooperate with it. Instead of just sort of being amazed when we seem to grow or change sometimes, or amazed when it seems like we leap forward in a way, we learn that, oh, that's not an accident. Oh, that's not just a serendipitous, thank goodness that happened. We move past that and we start going, look at that. I'm participating in this. I am co-creating with the innate spiritual presence and unity. We refer to that as the Christ, God individualized in each person. I learn how to co-create with that and to cooperate with that so that I am consciously creating things that are more and more life-giving, so that we are really walking the path of life, that we are making conscious connection with that Christ in us, that we're not just snoozing blissfully, or sometimes not so blissfully anymore, right? After a while, you get tired of sleeping. And so we learn how to make a conscious cooperation with that. And that's what we're going to be looking at this whole month. And I'll be talking about some things today, and then we'll be talking about it all month, and hopefully getting you engaged. Hopefully you're engaging yourself in that process of divine creativity. So the first thing, though, that is important when we're going to do something new is to let go of how it was, right? Oh, no, not that. So here in Isaiah was a prophet to the Hebrew people. And in Isaiah, it says in the Hebrew Bible, and what we quote in Christianity, sometimes called the Old Testament, God was moving the people of Israel into new experiences, into their new land. And so God was always encouraging them about, it's okay, I'm with you, it's going to be all right. So this is a beautiful verse here in chapter 43, and I'm going to start with reading verse 19. So here, through the prophet Isaiah, here's what God is conveying to the people of Israel. God says, I'm about to do a new thing. I'm about to do a new thing. Boy, that's hopeful, isn't it? I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Now it springs forth. Think about the energy and the zeal. I'm about to do a new thing, and now it springs forth. I'm about to do a new thing, and it springs forth. And now it springs forth. Let's affirm that. I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Let's affirm that together. I'm about to do a new thing. Now it springs forth. Feels good. And then it goes on, and God continues to say through the prophet Isaiah, God says, do you not perceive it? That's a good question, isn't it? Do you not perceive it? God can do all kinds of things, and let me clue you in, God's always doing all kinds of things, and I'm not talking about some person sitting on the clouds up there. I'm talking about the innate life energy through us and throughout this whole creation. Everything in creation is a manifestation and expression of God. God is always doing amazing, wonderful good, but we don't always perceive it, right? Because sometimes we're walking around like this, right? We've got our blinders on, or we've got the little doom cloud over our heads, and we don't see it. We don't perceive what's going on. So a lot of what's important in creativity is to start looking around and noticing all the amazing things in the good way that's happening. Look at all that good. Look at the good in my own life. That's why gratitude's the super highway to God, because it opens us up to paying attention to what's good. It opens us up to paying attention to the presence of good, the presence of God in our lives and in our world. So God says, don't you perceive it? Do you not perceive it? You got to look for it. You got to notice it. And then God goes on and says, I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. And that's a big deal, in that land, which is hotter and drier than Texas. I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert. Wow. That's amazing. I'm going to see you through what seems to be desolate, and I'm going to let life flow through what seems to be dead. That's a big deal, right? Take a minute, I'm not going to ask you to share about this, but take a minute in your own life and think about that. What about that? If God's going to make a way for you through what seems desolate in your life. Wow, not alone. God's going to make life flow through what seems dead in my life, in my own consciousness, right? Wow. You feel that? It's a big deal, isn't it? That's always what God is telling us. And that's, again, it's the Christ within us. It's the Christ within every person. It's the Christ within all creation. What that's saying is we're never without hope. I don't care what it looks like on the outside. Stuff, you know what about conditions? The spiritual truth about people, places, things, and conditions? This has come to pass. Think about that. We think about come to pass as like, oh, well, it's happened. It has come to pass away, right? This has come to pass. Conditions always change. The opportunity we have is with my consciousness, am I going to grind on things that upset me and keep them in place as long as possible? Or am I going to be willing to let go of things that distress me, that Mr. Repeat there in the boat? Am I going to be willing to take the risk to reach out to Spirit and let something different happen? That's the opportunity, and that's what we're all learning as we grow spiritually. So I read you verse 19 first. So now I'm going to read you the verse that comes right before it. Okay, God's saying all this is happening here. I'm doing this. Pay attention. But then verse 18, the verse right before there's a condition on all this. And here's the condition. Verse 18. Do not remember the former things or consider the things of old. Do not remember the former things or consider the things of old. Now, that doesn't mean that you're supposed to put blinders on and pretend like nothing happened or stuff doesn't bother you or whatever. That's not what it means. It means don't grind on it. Don't get stuck there. Don't stay there. If you want something new to happen, let go. Do what you have to do to face the past, to deal with it, and to heal it so that you can accept, so that you can perceive all that is new, so that you can perceive this good that God is doing. So you've got to be willing to reach out. You've got to be willing to see that there's possibility. You've got to be willing to see that something new can happen. I got to tell you a story on myself. One of my things that I get stuck in is technology. I just, this is true. When I was in high school and taking a typing class, we still had there were still manual typewriters, and there were also electric typewriters. Guess who did not want to learn on the electric typewriter? I was like, no, I want the manual typewriter. I like, but it's hard. Anyway, so that's where I get with technology. So anyway, so last week, 2 weeks ago, had been kind of a lot of stuff, just little technological things that happened around the church with the computers, and I'm like, oh. So I was kind of frazzled. And then last weekend, I made the worst happen to me personally. It was, I love using the GPS on my phone because I still get lost in Austin. I got to tell you, I just use my GPS. So all of a sudden, I'm driving around, and I'm noticing that the GPS on my phone is not working. She is not talking to me. And I'm like, where did you go? Where did you go? So, so I look and I see that it's not, hooking into the big network there, the big data network. I just noticed that the little icon on the phone it's not hooking in. So I'm like, what am I going to do? I don't know what to do. So I called up Sprint and I said, I'm sure the cell towers are down. She's like, well, no, they're not. I'm like, I know they are. I was sure this is what's going on. And she's very polite. But anyway, so then she tells me this stuff to do, to punch all these numbers in, to change, I don't know, supposed to reset something or whatever. So I do this all. Anyway, so it didn't work. Nothing happened. I was distraught. So I'm like, she's not talking to me. What am I going to do? So then I think, okay. So then the next day, well, I guess anyway, Monday I said, all right, I'm going to take it to the Sprint store. So I take it to the Sprint store, and this nice young man, he's looking at it, and he's playing with it, and he's like, I don't know. He says, I don't know what it could be. He says, how old is this phone? I said, it's really new. It's like less than a year old. It's an iPhone 8. I had to buy a new phone because my other phone pooped out. And he's like, well, I don't know. He says, I don't know. He punched in the numbers to do the same thing she'd already told me. And of course it didn't work. And he said, well, you're just going to have to take it down to the South Park Meadows, and they're going to have to take this thing apart. Do you have insurance on it? I'm like, oh, no. And I thought, I really do know how to get to South Park Meadows, but I thought, how am I going to get to South Park Meadows if she won't tell me how to get there? I really do know how to get there. So, but then because he's not afraid of that phone like I am, he's not afraid of technology, he's still playing with it, and he's doing this and that and the other. He goes, oh, look at this, you turned your data thing off. I'm like, what? He said, look, and he, punches the thing in the data, whatever, I turned off the data thing. Somebody did. I don't know who did it. And I laughed, and I'm like, I don't know how that happened. I don't know how that happened. I did not touch that. I don't know how that happened. Anyway, but I was really happy, and I thanked him profusely for this. So the takeaway for me is ask for help. When I don't know what's going on, ask for help from somebody that does. Reach out. That's the takeaway for me. Don't say there's no hope. And, I can go into all these scenarios about the phone and all this, how much money this is going to cost me, and I can just go off on all these trips. That's not necessary. It's the same thing for us. Whatever it is that's happening in our lives, instead of going all off on all these things about how we're doomed, this is the end. It just narrows everything down, right? And when you're like this, how creative are you? Not very, right? Not very. So the opportunity is, in whatever way you can, is to reach out for help, to pray, to say, okay, God, I know you have a solution for this. And I did. I had prayed about it. I said, God, I don't know what it is, but I know you have a solution. I know there's a divine solution. But I have to be willing to take the steps, right? I can't just sit around in my little tank and think it's going to, land on my head. I have to be willing to reach out. That's the opportunity. Reach in to spiritual guidance, and then reach out into the avenues that make sense. And a lot of times it's just plain old common sense, like that sort of thing. It's not a lot of times all that complicated. But to do that, I have to let go of I'm going to do it myself thing, I have to get off that because it doesn't work. I have to be responsible for myself, but it doesn't work for me to just sit around and get upset and not reach out for help. That doesn't work. So whatever it is for you, whatever it is in any given situation, that's the old way of doing things, is the opportunity is to make a new choice, to do it in a different way, to reach out, to reach in and to reach out and do what it is that we're guided to do. We're in a time in our lives individually, and we're in a time in our world, and we're in a time in our country, and it's on my mind because it's coming up on the 4th of July, where we're having the opportunity to choose to live our values, to live spiritual values in this country, and to live, and I'm not talking about religious values, I'm talking about spiritual values, which have to do with oneness and inclusion and love. And I want to share something with you that Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of our Unity movement, wrote in 1912. And I put this in the heart notes that I wrote this week that are on our Facebook page, and also that came out in the Shine the Light. So here's what Charles Fillmore wrote. He wrote this in 1912. This is when World War I was just getting kind of brewing over there in Europe. So he wrote, he says, since we know each one of us is a part of a great whole, a member of one great family, it is no longer necessary to hunt for those who are our brothers. All men are our brothers, all women are our sisters, all are equal in the sight of the divine mind. All are bound together by one common tie in a great universal brotherhood with all life. And then he goes on, and at the end of it he wrote, nothing in this world of ours is more needed than love. Not the narrow, selfish love that demands the exclusive possession of its object, not the love that holds its object so close that it stifles it, but the broad, generous love which expresses itself in a kindly spirit to all. Until such is practiced, there can be no real, no universal brotherhood. And also in that same article, that was in a little weekly, that's how the Unity started with this thing called Weekly Unity. Also in that same article, he said this, I was a little hesitant to print it in the paper because it can be misunderstood, but I'll give you a little context. He was talking about, again, this was when World War I was starting to brew up, so he was saying, some people are saying, well, there should be a United States of Europe. And he says, oh no, he said, there should be a United States of the world. And he didn't mean by that the sinister world government. Oh no, that's why I hesitate to print that because somebody will jump on it. But he wasn't talking about that America should run the thing. He was talking about the world being united, and that's pretty far-reaching vision, isn't it? In 1912, and then he goes on to talk about how he says because this is what Jesus taught. This is everything that Jesus taught about the universal brotherhood, sisterhood of human beings, that we're all one. That's everything that Jesus taught. And so that's the opportunity that we have. As we create our lives as individuals, we are also part of creating what's happening in the social fabric. And that is essential. So when we talk about creativity, it's both and, it's a paradox. When I learn that to consciously create good and create from good in my own life and to learn more, we all know how to do that. It's about expanding and increasing our ability to do it. Also what's happening is we are participating in creating the greater good in our society and in the way that we relate to other human beings and in the way that we relate to this earth. It all works together, and it's about creating from spiritual principles of love and oneness. And that's what we're called to do. Also in the Heart Notes, the title of it is Who Are We to Love? And then the second part, and we're to love everybody, we know that. And the second part of it is basically, well, who am I to be that one that loves? Well, you know who you are to be that one that loves, because that's where it starts, right? You can't say everybody else ought to love everything and make things better. What we are called to do is to start with ourselves. And as we do that, what happens is that we learn how to make that good manifest. And it shifts everything. If we are willing to let go of and to deal with and to face emotions, wounds of the past, despondency or despair or upset or whatever, we face it. And as we're willing to work through that, what happens is it opens up space and we start to really grasp how it is that God is in everything and everybody, and we're creating from that place. We get despondent about the future because we haven't healed wounds from the past. We project the past into the future. And the opportunity that we have as people who are consciously choosing spiritual growth is to stop doing that. There's an old story told about a cowboy who was back in the old Western days, who they would send the movies around. The people would come and play those old movies. They would go from town to town and have a traveling show and play movies. So there's a story that one of those traveling movies came to the old-fashioned movies came to this little western town, and people were watching it, and this old cowboy was out in the audience, and he was watching it. And there was one scene, where the villain ties the damsel to the railroad tracks, and all how they used to do. And the cowboy got really upset about this, and he started shooting at the screen. Well, we know that what he should have done was he didn't like it, he could have turned off the projector or something or gone back there. That's what we do a lot of times, don't we? We shoot at the screen. Friends, all it does is put a hole in the screen. It doesn't change anything. But what changes everything is when we are accountable to go into our own lives, when we are seeing I'm stuck in the repeat boat here, and we're willing to go, what's going on in me? What is going on inside of me? If we're making a choice, I've had that experience sometimes. Should I do this? Should I do that? I thought if I go this way, I'll feel guilty because I'm not helping this person. If I go that way, I'll feel guilty because I'm not helping that person. What's the problem there? The problem is I'm feeling guilty about not doing what I think other people need. That's a problem. That's ridiculous. I need to let that go and go inside and say, what's going on with me? Has nothing to do with feeling guilty about not doing what they want. Has to do with me. I'm scared to make a choice. That's what's going on. And then I can get centered and I can get still. A lot of times that movie that's showing up on the screen has nothing to do with what's really going on, right? It's a mask. It's a mask for not dealing with what's going on in us. Because sometimes that takes guts. Not sometimes, it always takes guts. It's so much easier to blame other people or to get all freaked out and, to sit in a lump. That's easy. What's hard is to go, I'm going to take responsibility for what's going on in me. I'm going to see what that is, and I'm going to know that I never go in there alone, right? Well, they say don't ever go into that neighborhood by yourself in your head. And the good news is that you don't ever have to because God's always there. So it's an opportunity to take God into that neighborhood of our own consciousness, into that neighborhood of our own mind, and to to find out what's going on in there. And always there's going to be positive results. I want you to take out your brochure. This was in your bulletin today. I'm just going to point out a few things briefly to you. But we're going to be working with this all month. And the title of this brochure is The Creative Process of Manifestation. And I created this a long time ago, and I've given it to you before. And it's adapted from Charles Fillmore, the Unity co-founder's book, Prosperity. And in it, as you'll notice, it's talking about the 7 steps of manifestation. We're going to be working with this all month. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to read this on your own and to practice it. On the back there's a commitment at the bottom in a little box on the back. And it says, my commitment to manifesting my good, July 1st through July 31st, 2018. It says, I prayerfully discern what new good God has for me, what I'm ready to bring forth in my life, and I write it down here. So you can do that at home. You can take a moment prayerfully to think about what it is, that new good that you're being guided to manifest in your life. And whatever it is, I guarantee you it'll also bless the world. Because the more we're conscious, the more we're blessing the world. And then the next part of the commitment is in my daily prayer time, I read the 7 steps of the creative process of manifestation with this new good in mind. So it's just inviting you to read this brochure. Not too hard, take you less than 5 minutes with that new good in mind. And then, as the prophet Isaiah, reporting for God, told the people of Israel, do you not perceive it? Do you not perceive the new good? Taking the time to work with this month, and again, we'll talk about it every Sunday. I'll talk about a little bit, one more of those steps of manifestation, sometimes 2 of them at once. We'll talk about how it works. But it's really pretty simple. This stuff isn't complicated. Not complicated one bit. It's pretty simple stuff. What it takes is courage. The courage to do something different. The courage to take the risk, to reach out for the possibility that you can make a difference in your own life and in the life of this world. Henry Ward Beecher, who was a famous minister, and I think he was the brother, not the father. I think he was the brother of Harriet Beecher Stowe, who wrote that incredible book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. And Henry Ward Beecher said this. He said, every tomorrow has 2 handles. We can take hold of it with the handle of anxiety or the handle of faith. That's the option. There's a new world that's birthing, my friends, and we're part of it. Can you hear her breathing? Let's pray. Thank you, sweet Spirit. Give us courage. And so it is. Amen.
When you walk through the storm, hold your head